One of the qualities of a devotee is that they're clean. And Prabhupada was a super clean person. Actually, probably the cleanest person I've ever met. When he came to Hawaii after we moved to the new temple on Koala Way, they'd set up a beautiful room for Srila Prabhupada that's still there. And they asked me to make cushions. And they gave me this very dark blue fabric. So I stayed up like all night and I made these cushions and the bolsters for the side. And the next day he sent it back to me that he wanted white fabric. He said if it's dark you can't see that it's dirty, and he wanted to be able to wash it when it got at the least bit dirty. And then also in Devasadan Mandir in Detroit, when Prabhupada, we first moved into the temple, Prabhupada came, it was the Fisher Mansion, and Prabhupada came, and they had put these beautiful carpets out, and they'd fixed the room up really nice. The next day he said he wanted white sheets put over the carpets because that way you can see the dirt and you can take off the cover and wash it and put it back down. This is very, not fanatical, but just extremely clean. Such a good example for us.
Hare Krishna. Welcome everyone to another Ekadashi adventure into exploring the qualities of a devotee through the perfect example, the perfect gentleman, Srila Prabhupada, who demonstrated all of these. So as we have been doing, we're going to be sitting with our good friend, Siddhanta Prabhu, who has collated some specific parts of the Memories series that demonstrate the quality that we're going to review today, which is that the devotee is always clean. So Siddhanta, let us
Haribo.
Get into it.
Good to see you. Thank you. Yeah, this quality was actually a pretty easy one to find anecdotes or stories that reflect or give examples of Prabhupada having that quality in spades, actually. So it was easy and hard in one sense because there were so many that I had to cull it down to 7 this time. Last time we had 5, I think, stories, but this time these are shorter stories, but total maybe 20, 21 minutes in length for all of the stories. And we're going to be hearing, first of all, from Jamuna Devi Dasi. We'll also hear from Kishore, Kibajaya, Revati Nandan, Daivi Shakti Devi Dasi, Nischintya, and Shrutikirti Prabhu. So we have a really good lineup. So everyone, I hope, stays tuned for the entire nectar that is, I hope you enjoy, that I picked out, that gives great examples of Prabhupada being always clean. So if we can just jump right into it, let's hear right away from Jamuna Devi Dasi, and then we can talk a little bit on the other side, some of our realizations about that.
First day that I assisted Srila Prabhupada in the kitchen was for my sister's wedding in New York. And Srila Prabhupada cooked in a very small galley kitchen in his New York apartment, both sides counters. And he gave me the singular task of making a very difficult preparation called aloo kachori, which is still my Waterloo, because it's one of the most complex pastries to cook properly. It has to cook for a long time without becoming greasy, and that's almost impossible. It's like the elephant through the eye of a needle at the best of circumstances. But because the stuffing for this is mashed potatoes, it is even more difficult. If it's a pea kachori that can blow up like a stuffed puri, then it's easy. This is very difficult. So for nearly 8 hours, I was given that singular task of making aloo kachoris while Srila Prabhupada cooked a 14-course feast for the wedding single-handedly in his kitchen. And in the course of cooking that feast, I made so many mistakes from the very first day in his service. The first mistake I made was I had a very short skirt on and little t-shirt and sitting cross-legged, and I said, Swamiji, may I have a cigarette? And he popped his head out the corner and he said, go wash your hands. So I went and washed my hands. And so then he explained the 4 principles in Krishna consciousness. 4 prohibitions, and no meat eating, no gambling, no illicit sex life, no intoxication. So then, short time later, I said, Swamiji, may I have a glass of water? And he said, go wash your hands. So then he explained the first and simple, foremost principle in cooking is to engage the senses in the service of the Lord, and to cook for Krishna with love and devotion, and not think about our senses, our tongue, our sense of smell, the belly. This is cooking for Krishna. So then short time later I said, Swamiji, it's very hot in here. I was wiping perspiration. Go wash your hands. So then he began a little bit, the simplest principles, rudimentary principles of external cleanliness. And then he explained just the simplest touch of internal cleanliness. By balancing both of them, are we able to engage in the idea of serving Krishna through this art of cooking. So all 3 things, first day in the kitchen.
Jai. So it was wonderful how she also brought in external and internal. So when we talk about the pure devotee who is always clean, it's not just external, it's also internal.
Absolutely. We have a couple of other stories coming up regarding internal cleanliness as well. But yeah, these are things that Prabhupada taught us, and that's what Jamuna Dasi, Devi Dasi learned the first time engaging in service. Go wash your hands. And she got it, and she became the most expert cook and the most expert devotee, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
Now let's hear from Kishore Das from the UK, who gives us a personal experience with Prabhupada. And this experience is one that if we are inclined to become a Brahmin, Vaishnav, a Brahmin, please pay attention to this story. And let's talk about that after we hear from Kishore.
At the second initiation, here's the other initiation story. It was time, this would be about a year later, about 12 months or so later. Again, we're in Berry Place, and again, Prabhupada is awarding second initiation to some of the devotees, and I was included in the group. As it was, we weren't expecting the initiations to come until later in the day. So I'd been doing some service, and I was running around the temple, not necessarily prepared, but somehow something had happened and Prabhupada's schedule changed, and he had to leave to go on some preaching, to visit some life member or to go away. So the initiation was brought forward by about half a day, and someone came and said, Kishore, it's time, you have to go now to get your initiation. But I said, but I'm not ready, I haven't prepared, I think I had time quickly to have a quick shower, or maybe even just splash my face, and I don't even think I had time for a shower. So I did my best, put on a fresh dhoti, and rushed up the stairs. And almost immediately, I was ushered into Prabhupada's room, upstairs. Put some tilak on quickly. And the room was semi-dark. And Prabhupada's servant was massaging, I forget, it might have been Aravinda, possibly Aravinda. I don't know if it was Shrutakirti, but I think it was Aravinda at the time, can't remember. But it was just Prabhupada in his gamsha with this radiance coming off his body. You could see the oil and the radiance. So I was ushered into the room, and Prabhupada was at the other end of the room, the other side of the room. And I stepped inside, and Prabhupada immediately looked in my direction, and he said, "You have bathed today?" I'd barely even come into the room. And I said, "Yes, Prabhupada." I didn't want to go through the whole explanation or whatever. It would have just sounded so... I said, "Yes, Prabhupada." And he looked at me and said, "There is odor coming." And I thought, I've blown it. I'll have to wait till some other Prabhupada's going to kick me out. There's odor coming. And he was way at the other end of the room. And he looked at me and said, "Come." And I sat down. And he said softly, "Brahman means clean. Brahman must bathe 3 times daily." And then rather than say that, he said, "Come." And then he proceeded to give me Brahman initiation. I was astonished. How is it possible for him to, I just walked in. So that was my lesson, that if I want to be Brahman, then you be clean, clean.
So not only clean, but seeing clean, being able to see the state of cleanliness wherever he was, but giving us compassion.
Yeah, 2 qualities there. Instruction on how to be clean, and compassionate that he let that go by. He didn't say, come back another day after you've showered properly.
Yes, yeah.
Great, so that's a good one. Kibajaya is next, and we will hear from him. He is discussing an incident when he was a 4-year-old boy, a child. So this is an instruction regarding cleanliness for children.
Okay.
So let me, afterwards, I'll find out from you whether you've heard this story before.
All right.
So in the meantime, let us hear from Kibajaya.
My first, I would say, personal experience with Prabhupada, besides getting a cookie from him or him patting me on the head, was when I was 4 years old. I was, at the time, dressing as a sannyasi and had my danda, and we all met Srila Prabhupada at the airport, and I was we were all in the kirtan, I was in it, and then at the end of it all, I got to ride back to the temple in the Cadillac with Srila Prabhupada. So there was the driver in the front seat, my father was in the passenger seat doing security, and Prabhupada was here, and I was in the back seat. I danda, and Prabhupada was there, and I was just like, literally, this was the best day of my life. And so we're on our way back from the airport, and Srila Prabhupada takes out this big cookie that someone had given him. And he could see that I was obviously interested in the cookie. So he broke it in half and gave it to me, and I just ate it down real quick, just buried the thing. I was, super excited, and then I'm sitting there, and Prabhupada is just barely got into his. I think he was talking to, Hari Sari or somebody, whoever's in the front seat, the driver. He was talking to the driver, and didn't eat his right away. So I'm sitting there with mine finished, and Prabhupada still has his thing, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm a Brahmin. I'm supposed to wash my hands, and Prabhupada's sitting right next to me, and he's going to see that I don't wash my hands after I eat. And I'm 4 years old. This is the biggest problem that I could ever have. And I just remember, you know, my danda sitting next to the door, and I'm just like, I'm touching it. I'm thinking about what's gonna happen. You know, am I gonna be exposed as a smarta Brahmin or a false Brahmin? So I keep cool though. I watch Prabhupada and see what he does, and Prabhupada eats his cookie, and without touching his fingers to his lips. So he eats his cookie, and when he's finished, he goes. I look over and I say, and the time it was just such a relief. You know what I mean? There were all these pressures on me, you know. I'm a Brahmin, I gotta wash my hands, or maybe, you know, take a shower even, take a bath, you know. This is some pretty intense pressure. And Prabhupada went, and instantly my suffering vanished. You know, the suffering that was in my mind, you know, disappeared. And this event has meant more and more to me over the years as the time has passed, and I've had different realization and experiences, and I've come to take it as that meaning time, place, and circumstance.
Time, place, and circumstance. I love that. Yeah. I think I may have seen that before, but it's wonderful. Wonderful. Yeah, because that's the other side of the cleanliness equation. Niyamagraha, right? You know, not being too attached to the rules and the regular ritual cleanliness, but having the principle of cleanliness.
Yeah.
That's nice. Very nice.
And it shows another quality that Prabhupada could, you know, sense his disturbance, and he knew what was going on in his heart and his mind, and he solved it right there. Very simple. Time, place, and circumstance. And of course, so meaningful that he remembered it, you know, 40 years later.
Yeah, as a 4-year-old.
It made a real impression. Of course, being with a pure devotee, how could not be an impression? But he had that lesson and realization, and he's able to share it with us.
Special soul.
Now we're going to hear from Ray Bhaktinandan. At the time was Maharaj. We've heard a couple of times from Ray Bhaktinandan, but he was present with Prabhupada in his particular circumstance when it also showed his humility in practically demonstrating the process of cleanliness. So let's hear from Ray Bhaktinandan.
Another time at the same time, deities were there. It was either Radha Damodar or another almost identical set to Radha Damodar that we had acquired there. They were the medium, about this high, the multi-metal kind, really beautiful deities that we were worshiping there. And we were taking care of the deity worship. And the floor was wooden, and Prabhupada didn't think it was properly clean, and he'd mentioned it, and then when he saw it, he didn't think it was clean enough again. I remember Kaushalya had volunteered to clean the floor in the temple room. Prabhupada said, well, okay, this is how you do it. You're not doing it properly. Do it like this. And Prabhupada pulled his dhoti up and got down on his hands and knees, and he had a pot of water, right, and another pot. He said, get 2 pots, right, one for dirty water, one for clean water. And he took a rag and he put it in one pot of water. He got down, he scrubbed the floor, right. Then he went to the other pot and he wringed it. Then he wringed it out into that, and then he rinsed it, and then he put it in fresh water and put it back down, wring it out, and then went back down and mopped up what he'd done. He said, in this way you will keep one that is clean and one that gets dirtier, and always rinse the rag and then soak up the dirt. That way you'll pick up the dirt rather than just moving it around. But he spent like 2 or 3 minutes down on his hands and knees scrubbing the floor in front of the deities. I remember that was a nice thing to see him do. He didn't hesitate to do it at all. He got right down and showed Kaushalya exactly how he wanted it done.
Hare Krishna. That's Prabhupada.
Acharya.
Yeah, for us, teaching by his example doesn't, no airs, no, just, I'm here to teach you.
Yeah.
And I mean, what a standard. What a standard of cleanliness that he's invoking there, you know.
Yeah,
For Krishna,
whenever.
this is the temple room, by the way, this is the temple room. So it's like, really for Krishna,
Right.
cleanliness.
When I'm cleaning up, I always remember the story that about the two pots, dirty, one for dirty, one for clean. So that's been very edifying for me when I'm doing my cleaning, even in the house, what to speak of in the temple room.
Yeah.
Now let's hear from Devi Shakti, Mataji. This particular story will also give us an example of Prabhupada discussing internal and external cleanliness, but the focus here will be on internal cleanliness. And we can talk about this on after we hear from her speaking. Actually, I interviewed her in Prabhupada's courtyard in, where was I? In Vrindavan, just to give you a setting.
Mm-hmm.
This was again in 1974, maybe in August, after Janmashtami. Prabhupada was again recovering from his health, from his sickness. And we used to cook for Prabhupada, and then after cooking for Prabhupada, we would make something for his servants and secretaries to eat. There were 3 of them that we were cooking for that time. I think it was Brahmananda Swami, Bhagavan, Shrutikirti, maybe a few others. So we would bring that prasadam for them around to the front, and then a servant would come and drop off their plates, and we'd have to wash them all out here in the garden because there was no water in the house then. We'd have to draw all the water from the front well. So I was still in cleaning the kitchen up, and the plates of the servants had been left outside of the kitchen, my not knowing it. And the devotees hadn't finished their prasadam that day, so there was still some remnants on their plates. And Prabhupada came into the kitchen to go to his bathroom, and he saw these plates, and he called me, and he said, "What is this?" And I saw the plates. Normally I would have taken them and washed them right away. I said, "Oh, that's a mistake, Prabhupada. I was supposed to clean them." And he looked quite displeased. So immediately Prabhupada walked through his house to the front room where his secretaries lived, and seeing that Prabhupada was displeased, I picked up the plates and came the back way to show Brahmananda what Prabhupada had seen and how he wasn't happy about it. So simultaneously, Prabhupada came from one door, and I came from another door with the plates in my hands. And Prabhupada called me in and had me show them the plates with the prasadam on it. And he explained to them that no matter who you are, no matter whether you're GBC or anyone, once you touch the plate, whatever is on that plate, you have to finish it because it's prasadam. You shouldn't leave any prasadam on the plate. So Brahmananda, he said, jokingly, he said, "But Prabhupada, I had burped." So I thought that after you burp, you couldn't finish it. So anyway, the point Prabhupada was making, that whatever he said you can take off first. If they've given you too much, before you start, you take off. And that doesn't have to be completed. But whatever you have on your plate when you start, you have to finish that prasadam. So that he was telling to the topmost members of our society, the GBCs and personal secretaries, they had to finish their prasadam. Just like a father, he was instructing them.
So now we're hearing 2 relevant aspects: the aspect of cleanliness, of keeping things clean, but also honoring prasadam, that you don't leave. Of course, prasadam is never unclean, but still, it's a principle that you honor and finish the prasadam. You don't leave a prasad mess.
Yeah, it's a consciousness that you're
Consciousness.
honoring prasad and not wasting prasad, because that's Krishna. And the other point here is that no one is above the law. Just because you have some high position doesn't mean the rules don't apply to you.
Right.
So
you have to remember that. Yep.
Very much so. Now, another internal type of cleanliness consciousness will be told by Nishchintadas. And this story takes place in Hawaii. I'm not sure if he mentions it during the story, but he will tell us a piercing story of the heart, a very serious instruction that Prabhupada gave them at that time.
Hmm.
So the first time I saw Srila Prabhupada in Hawaii, the Pujari had really done a great job decorating the deities. There were banana leaves and tulsi, mounds of tulsi and flowers. And so when Srila Prabhupada started the lecture, he commented how beautiful the deities looked and how wonderful a job the Pujari had done. And he said, you must do this. You must decorate the deities very nicely. And by decorating the deities, you are decorating your heart. And then he said, and if you neglect to decorate the deities, then you will be neglecting to decorate your heart. And then your heart would become black. And he goes, and that is why so many have left. And everybody was, because he said it in a very grave voice. You know, first it was very ecstatic, and then, and that is why so many have left. And everybody got like nervous and stuff.
Cleansing the heart, Cheto Darpana Marjanam. We have to clean the heart. If we neglect, the heart will tarnish. That's it.
Yeah, it's a very, the way he describes it too is very visual. You can just see it happening, and Prabhupada's sitting there, and sometimes I know for myself, I take things for granted, you know, the deity worship or paying your obeisances quickly without saying each word clearly on both mantras. You know, when we enter a temple room, when you leave a temple room, there's a tendency to be, at least for myself, to be lazy in that way. So all these things are matters of cleanliness of the consciousness, raising our consciousness. Prabhupada was there to help us along the way.
I mean, that cleanliness means being particular, being aware of doing things the right way. You know, it's not, it's like sloppy, you know, cleanliness and sloppiness, you know, are opposites.
Now we're going to hear from Shruti, who of course was with Prabhupada for 2.5 years as a servant.
Yes.
And this particular anecdote, I'm not sure if it was in his book. It might be also, obviously, and it could be in his book. I'm not sure. I don't remember. But it gives us an example how a perfect gentleman, a Vaishnav, is always clean, and even while traveling. So let's hear from Shruti.
On one trip from Delhi, Prabhupada was headed to, he usually traveled west. But from Delhi, we went to Bangkok, which is almost 10 hours. And then he was going to have another 10-hour flight. So we get to the airport, we're sitting in a transit lounge, and we were changing airlines, everything. We had to go through customs, immigration. After flying 10 hours, maybe Prabhupada, I'm not sure what his health was at that situation, but when we're sitting down in transit, he said to me, I need to take bath. He said, I have to refresh. He said, I feel I need to refresh. It was like a feeling, he said. He said, can you get my things? And the suitcases were right over there because they were getting transferred through customs. So I opened up his suitcase and get everything, which meant I had to get a gamsha, I had to get a towel, his lota. There's no showers. He wanted to bathe. Like we're walking into a shower, walking into a bathroom that's the size of a factory, you know, big 20 sinks, toilets, urinals, people in and out constantly. And so I get everything and we go in. So I'm waiting for him, of course. I don't know how we're going to do this. And he said, okay. He said, well, go by the sink. He said, you fill. So he tells me, Prabhupada tells you what to do. So we're in a very public men's room in the airport. And I'm literally like bathing. It's like an Abhishek ceremony going on. You know, Prabhupada's squatting and I'm bathing him. Just, you know, he's soaping. And people are walking in, passing urine, you know, going to toilets, washing their hands. And there's an attendant there. not doing anything, but he's there and he's visibly unhappy, let's say. His water's splashing all over the floor. And Prabhupada, it's like we were in his room, you know. I mean, he's literally, Prabhupada was on such a different level than everyone else. Sometimes you noticed it, you know, like I always say traveling with him was the most fun because he was just so aloof from everyone. He always just did things the way he wanted. And if someone said things, his tendency was he didn't hear even. He didn't understand English, he didn't hear, whatever it was, he'd just go on his way. He didn't care. He didn't have anyone to impress or feel shame from, nothing. He had no desires other than to serve. And this was part of it, you know. He said, I have to refresh. So we go do everything. It was wonderful in a sense, you know, here we are. And I got it's the only time I did a Abhishek to him when I was with him as his servant. It was pretty special. And then I help him dress, puts on his dhoti kurta, and we head out. So of course, as we're heading out, this attendant's at the door, and I don't know what he's saying in his Thai language, he's just going off, you know. And again, Prabhupada, obviously he heard him, but he's just walking out. So I'm walking behind Prabhupada. And when I was with Prabhupada, of course, I did not at all have that aloof mentality that he had. Sometimes I would become, you know, I just wanted to hide, you know, I hate to admit it, you know, I was a rascal, you know, I didn't see things the way he did. I was always concerned what others were thinking. So I'm falling behind, and as we get out, I said, Prabhupada, I said, this guy's really ticked off, you know, and he said, yes, I know. He said, I had to bathe, like, and that was it. He knew what he had to do, and he did it. And that's the way Prabhupada was. You know, if something needed to be done, he just did it. There was nothing to interfere with it. So even when we were in the most public place ever, for him, it was just did what he did.
That is quite extraordinary. Yeah. Had you heard that story before? Yes, I have. I remember that. And it is extraordinary. And of course, you know, not only that Srila Prabhupada didn't pay much attention to the attendant, but the attendant was actually, you know, you could see the attendant could have gotten really, you know, you can't do this, and interfered and so on. But he was also restrained by Krishna. You know? So Prabhupada has to do his what he has to do. Right. So you can get angry, but it goes on.
Right. Anyway, those are several examples of internal and external stories about Prabhupada instructing us and showing us how to be clean.
Oh, Hare Krishna. I mean, it's such a the pure devotee, you know, the devotee who has overcome all other anarthas that we may harbor, is able to maintain such a wonderful standard. I'm just kind of personally a little bit in awe, knowing myself, you know, to have such a standard.
Yeah, that's why
I'm glad to be able to serve such a pure devotee and perfect gentleman.
Oh yeah, we always have to have an attitude of gratitude and count our blessings that we were on the planet when Prabhupada was here, and his instructions are still here. And these stories are here for future generations to take shelter of and to learn about him from devotees like yourself and others. So anyway, next.
Thank you so much for collecting them, and we have them now. And we're going on. I mean, there's still more to come, right?
I'm actually next week, a week from yesterday, I'm going to Alachua again for the 5th time I think I've been there, and going to interview Kirti Raj, Mukhya, Radha Damodar again, Pushpavan, Madhurya Leela Nanda, Guru Gauranga again has more stories, and Ragamika Devi Dasi. So number.
Fantastic.
And then recently I interviewed Bhakti Sundar Goswami. He was in Mexico City. Yeah. That one was over the Zoom conference, so the video quality is not up to what I'd like to have, but the audio was fine. So that's there. And then when Agni Dev was here in LA several weeks ago. I interviewed him. So number 90, 91, and 92 probably will be produced this year too.
Fantastic. Okay. We look forward to it.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for being with us this Ekadashi. And we look forward to being with you again next Ekadashi.
Haribo.
Thank you.
Jai.